I want to first start off by saying big thank you to all the wonderful people who are supporting the Patreon for this podcast. They are getting some awesome bonus stuff like special recordings, sneak peeks of artwork and other projects that I'm working on, and they are helping grow this podcast. They are helping move towards the goal of providing transcriptions so that deaf people can take part in these conversations. And they are also helping support the work that I do, running down guests, getting people on the show, coordinating people in different time zones and on other sides of the planets. And finally, they're helping improve the production value of this podcast by allowing me to start considering acquiring better equipment and get away from some of the janky duct tape together process I've been doing for a long time. If you dig the podcast, jump over to patreon.com/thehermitslamp and pitch in. Every dollar helps. Welcome to the Hermit's Lamp podcast. I have back for our annual conversation, Barbara Moore. If you have not listened to the previous episodes, check them out in the show notes and maybe even consider stopping here and rolling back and going to listen to those. I find it hard to imagine that people don't know who you are, Barbara, but in case they don't, who are you?
Oh, yes. Gosh, I haven't answered this in a while. I've forgotten my usual answer. I am a tarot reader, a tarot deck creator, a tarot author, a tarot teacher, and I also do some work for Lo Scarabeo, an Italian tarot deck publisher, and I also do the acquiring and project management of Llewellyn's tarot projects, kits and books. So that is probably what most people know me for.
Mm-hmm. But, I think that what I'd like to start with is a lot's been going on since we had our last conversation. There have been huge changes in your life. And that started really with like an unusual sort of shift in your relationship.
Yes, it sure did. And this story actually started. It was just starting during our last conversation, but it wasn't time to talk about. It was too soon. So it actually began, well, if we're going to give it a point, we'll say October 2016. Although, of course, like all stories, it started a little bit before then. So I'll try to condense the story and then we can unpack different parts of it if we want to. So the beginning of the story started sometime earlier in 2016, maybe even in 2015. And what started happening is my wife was starting to feel very discontented with her life, and started questioning ideas about herself, who she is versus what she'd been taught to be. And this included behaviors and habits, as well as the way she presents herself to the world and moves through the world. And her way to deal with that for about a year and a half was to say we needed to move. And two things were going on. One, the housing market was really bad and we were underwater mortgage-wise at that time. Also, I felt very, very rooted in my home. And I didn't want to move. So although we kind of played with those ideas, it didn't go anywhere. And then after talking and things going on, we can't remember who came up with the idea first, but we finally realized that it wasn't we who needed to move. It was she who needed to move. But it wasn't so much that she needed to move somewhere to live. She needed to go on an actual quest, an actual journey of self-discovery, like a physical journey. And so in the summer of 2016, we started researching ways to live in your car and how to live on the road, and also kind of culling back our budget so that we could live on one salary. And then in the summer, in the fall, she quit her job that she quit 2 weeks shy of her 20-year anniversary. And she was a book cover designer for Llewellyn. And then on October 3rd, she packed up her car and she took off. And she had no plan. She didn't know where she was going to go, what she was going to do, just go. And and then I stayed home and I held down the house and managed all of the household day-to-day stuff, whatever. And for the first month, she didn't have contact with anyone, not me, not anybody, because she just needed to like have a sorbet, like cleanse herself, like just have the space. And then even after that, she didn't have contact with other people until around Christmas time. So like 3 months. And, so what she did was, of course she went south and west because of weather. And so she did spend some time sleeping in her car in national forest lands and at truck stops and in Walmart parking lots. And she also used a website called couchsurfing.com, I think it is. And that's a website where people just say, you need a place to sleep, you can sleep on our couch. And they're perfect strangers, and so she was very brave and went and stayed, at strangers' houses sometimes. But the main website that she used was something called workaway.org. And what Workaway is it's this website where families or people, not businesses, okay, so it's all personal stuff, where people need help or need someone to do work, you can work for them in exchange for a place to sleep and sometimes a meal. It varies depending on the situation. And so she used Workaway and worked at the small family farmed ranch in Colorado. She worked at a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. She worked in Phoenix, and then she worked up the coast of California. And so during this time that she
you're hanging out. And all the while you're hanging out, living your life sort of as it was when she was there, but now you're by yourself.
Correct.
Okay.
And so some of the projects that I was focusing on while she was gone was we were really focusing on getting rid of things. We just had so much stuff. Like people who've been in a house for 13 years, you tend to accumulate a bunch of stuff. And we want it to be lighter and to be more open and not so weighted down. And so I spent a lot of time just going through the house and getting rid of stuff and making it, as essential as possible. I also I had so much going on professionally that last year as well. I was helping with Los Scarabeo and Arcana Publishing in China to start a tarot school in China, and not just like offering workshop weekend classes or whatever, but set up like a 6-month school, it's ongoing school, but each course is 6 months. And so working on getting that together. And then I was presenting in Italy for Los Scarabeo's 30th anniversary. I was teaching at Omega Institute, so I was preparing for that. I had 3 writing projects due. So I had a bunch of my work that I was working on. And I didn't realize this was something that really took so much, sapped me, took so much energy, was I was holding space for her while she was gone. And by that, I mean, like, I was holding safety for her, of course, and then just space and guidance and just and holding the center, of our relationship, our home, our life, steady, so that she could go and do what she needed to do. Like I was like a pole and she was like a balloon, and I was holding the string that gave her enough freedom to do what she needed to do, but enough security to feel safe in doing what she needed to do. So, so I was doing all that while she was gone. I also visited her 3 times while she was gone. I went out for my birthday to San Diego in January. And then we met up in Portland at the Newts conference. And then she ended up in a place called Potter Valley in Northern California. And she got there in January and stayed until the end of May. So clearly she liked this place. She liked it a lot. And she discovered, after doing a bunch of different work, like she even did a little bit of design work because she felt like she was done with design, but she gave it a few more tries, and she's discovered, she is pretty much done with design, at least for now. And oddly enough, what she discovered is that she loves farm work. Very physical, very, she just loved the farm work. And she loves the people in Potter Valley. She said that all her life, she'd always wanted to be part of community and always tried in different ways to be, in this community, that group, whatever, and never felt like she was really enfolded into any group. And, Potter Valley has less than 700 people. It's really tight knit. It's really liberal. It's populated by a lot of either aging hippies or next generation hippies. So politically it fits in with our beliefs really well. The farmers are all committed to organic growing for their crops, and then humane treatment of animals for their animal that they may use for milk or meat or wool or whatever. So I came out. She wanted me to come to Potter Valley to see Potter Valley. So I did come out and see this place. But I was super sick and super tired, and I honestly didn't remember much about it, except that it was lovely, and the people were very kind and generous and open. So then she came home in June, and then and she was good. I mean, it was amazing what happened to her on this trip. Before she left, she had some health things going on. First, she was on anti-anxiety medication. Second, she had a lot of physical aches and pains. Her spine bothered her. She'd go to the chiropractor several times a week. She couldn't sleep very well. She had, always waking up, not getting good night's sleep. So all this stuff. Okay, so she was sleeping on mattresses on the floor, in her car, bad beds all over the place. She got off her anxiety meds completely. With her doctors, she talked to him before she left, and this is what she wanted to do. So she didn't just stop. She, had medical support for that. And then she didn't have to go to the chiropractor. Her back didn't hurt. She slept like a baby. I mean, it was just incredible. And she was all like loose and groovy. I mean, she always could be that, but she always had this very this is how things are, and let's be organized. Let's, have plans, and, just very orderly. And she just got really spontaneous and loose and open, and not having expectations. Things should be this way, which made her happier with everything because she wasn't comparing it to what she thought it should be. And then she got home, and she was cool for 2 days. And then it all started happening again. All the old things, just whatever. We don't really know for sure what it was about there. Maybe the house, maybe just she'd been there for almost 50 years being a certain way and couldn't be differently there. Whatever it was, I sent her back to Potter Valley. I'm like, let's just get you gone. And, but we also decided that we were going to sell our house, because the market had improved over that past year. In fact, houses were selling really well, and that we would move to Potter Valley. And so which
is where you are now.
Which is where I am speaking to you from right now. Yeah, so the thing about Potter Valley is there's not a lot of housing here. It's I think it's zoned or set up so that new construction is not really something that happens here. And to buy a farm or a house would be hundreds of thousands of dollars because it's California. And but luckily, the last people she worked for, their names are Carol and Noel, and they built an apartment kind of tucked into their house. So their house kind of is above and around our house, our apartment. And they built this apartment, and they built it because they are both American Sufis. They follow Samuel Lewis's teachings. He's the man who developed the Dance of International Peace. I think that's what it's called. And they're both in the healing tradition of that tradition. And part of what they do is hospice work and helping people transition from life to death. And so some of their Sufi friends were getting older and dying. So they built this apartment so that those people, if they wanted to, could have a place to die with Sufi healers around them. And so they knew that my wife was looking for somewhere to live here, but they never offered her this apartment because it was built for Sufis. And so when I came to visit them, they were asking me, what do you believe, Dylan? So, Dylan, I should say one of the changes that happened to my wife while she was on her journey was that she kind of honed in on who she felt like she was in terms of just outward presentation to the world. And part of that is, she's a female, and but she feels way more comfortable when she dresses either like an 8-year-old boy or a really old man. Those are kind of like her two styles. But she always felt weird about doing that back in St. Paul for some reason, because that's not what is expected, and she wasn't raised to be that way. And the other thing is she got a boy haircut, which is so cute on her and suits her so well. She seems so comfortable. But even more importantly than the outward expression is how she calls herself. And she never felt like her name, which was Lisa, it never really suited her. She didn't feel like it matched who she was. And so she left home, and I did not know this until like November or December. She left home with a list of gender-neutral names that she wanted to try out while she was on the road. And so and the name Dylan was on the list, and it was the first one she tried, and it stuck. So now she hasn't legally changed her name because that's like oodles of paperwork, but she is going by Dylan now. So I was saying my wife, because I hadn't told that story, and most people probably know her name is Lisa. Now we are calling her Dylan. So anyways, the Carol and Noel were asking me about my beliefs because they said, Dylan said you're kind of into this kind of stuff. And so I explained it, my loose ideas about how the world works and whatever. And so they said, oh, so you're a Sufi too. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. I'm not in anything or whatever. And they said, well, you're what we would call a wild Sufi. And wild Sufi just means you're not attached to any group. You're just out there doing your Sufi things. So, right after that, they offered us this place to stay because
amazing.
I'm a Sufi. I can stay in this apartment. So that's how we ended up with this little apartment, which is quite a change. We had a 3-bedroom house, 2 stories, built 1911, big, beautiful craftsman workmanship. And I had my own office and everything. And now we're in a 1-bedroom, very, very, very tiny place. So we've had a lot of adjustments, but I suppose we'll get to the adjustments a little bit later. So now we are here in Potter Valley, and she is doing farm work for lots of different farmers in the area. She also is working a little bit for the local community college's art department. She started off doing life modeling there for the life drawing class. She was doing that back in the cities too. She just likes to do that. And she's now also, because the art director or the professor who's in charge of the art department, her assistant quit. So she has to fill in if she'd step in for the rest of the school year to fill in for that. So she's working with her and helping to produce the student spring art show. So she's got really a wide variety of things going on. And so she's super, super happy.
Mm-hmm. So how is it for you? Because from the outside, it seems like you basically just gave up everything and moved out there. How are you adjusting to kind of like finding your way into the world which Dylan sort of found and had already kind of put roots into?
Yes, and that you used the right words, because she told me several months after she was here that she felt like she was putting down roots, exact words. And so, yeah, how is it for me? Well, yeah, I mean, I think on the surface of it, one could say, oh, you just gave up everything so she could have this life that she wanted. And that is both true, but also not true. Because for me, I had spent most of my life moving. I lived in lots of different places and never stayed grounded in one space for too long. And I also reinvented myself a lot. Like, I've had so many incarnations of this life, in this life. And yet when we were in that house that we just left, we'd lived there for 13 years, and never in my life, even as a child, I'd never lived in one dwelling for that long. And I also don't feel like I changed. The biggest change in myself while I was living there was I left full-time employment to do freelance, but still working for the same company as well as other companies. So not a huge like reinvention. And so I started feeling like if I don't move, I will probably die here. And I don't mean that in like a bad way, like, oh my God, I'll die in 3 years because of whatever. Just that I could very comfortably grow old, settle, and live here the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. And then I thought, well, crap, I'm not ready for that to happen yet. I mean, traveling is cool. I love traveling, of course, but there's also nothing like living in different places, which is different than traveling. And also becoming a different person and shaking up my life. So it's very much ready for that. Also, and this is very, very important, I was so done with being cold for 6 months of the year. I mean, unless you live in Minnesota or have lived, you don't really, I don't think you can fully understand how cold it is and for how long. And I was just done with it. And
it's as we're recording this, it is December 13 today.
Yes.
And in Toronto, where I am, it is, I don't know, minus 15 Celsius with the wind chill. So 15 or 16 Fahrenheit. It's cold. Yeah. It's a thing. It's real.
So cold. Yeah. And right now it is about 10:30 in the morning here, and it's about 50 degrees. It'll get up to about 66 this afternoon. So that's much warmer. Yes, civilized. Yeah. Okay. So, right. And then so I wanted to not have the physical trappings of my life set for the rest of my life. So that was one thing that was a plus for me to move here. Not being cold, that was another plus. Another thing that was super important, and this was really actually harder than I thought it would be, is I wanted to have a year off. And by a year off, I mean not committing to other projects, book contracts, teaching, anything, and except for my work for Llewellyn and Low Scare Vale, because one does need some kind of income. And here's a clue: farm hands don't make a lot of money.
If you think about abandoning it all and moving to the country, you will not get rich.
You're not going to get rich. You can't be doing it for the money. So except for, just that work, which is very, very part-time, I wanted to have nothing. And, when you work hard to get your name out there, to be involved in the community, opportunities come your way. And it gets really hard to say no to them. So I had to do a lot of training myself to say no. And I have had many invitations, and I have nothing. I have no book contracts for 2018. I have no teaching obligations. I have nothing. So I've created this space where I can just start reading what I want, researching what I want, playing with different ideas, totally disconnected to anything that anyone needs from me. And
it's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing how far you've come. Like, I remember when I don't know if it was the first time we talked or the second time we talked, but you were giving up your Facebook and social media and withdrawing from that stuff so you could focus more on what matters.
Right.
And then here you are some number of years later, like withdrawing even further from sort of obligation and the things that people think that should be done and so on, so that you can instead focus on what you want and need to do, It's pretty amazing.
Gosh, you're right. I hadn't really realized that, but it is so true. I keep taking off the veils of the unessential to get to the heart and bones or something.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I'm thinking about pursuing, of course I'm not committing, I'm just playing with the idea, is becoming an interfaith minister. I over the last couple of years, I've performed a couple of weddings and working with the couples, and like the last wedding I did was so fun. Oh my gosh! So it was a couple who were friends of one of my nieces, and my two older nieces are total like nerds and geeks. Like they play, role-playing games and magic and, and they read all the good books and stuff. And, so I kind of rediscovered that part of myself when they came of age, because I started playing with them a little bit too. Anyways, one of their friends, their couple were getting married, and they're also big, into all that stuff. And so their wedding was very subtly influenced by, Star Trek, Star Wars, Harry Potter, just all their favorite fandoms. And so when I talked with them about, how do we want the ceremony to go, because, one thing I try to do is like make it so that it suits their personality, but also, if it's what they want, helps their families feel part of it and comfortable as well. And, of course, their families come from Christian backgrounds, and, the groom was more agnostic and the bride was more pagan, so tying in philosophy from his end and paganism from her end, Christianity from the parents' end, and wrapping it all up with their fandoms was so fun. Like in one sentence, I'm like quoting Jesus Christ and Albus Dumbledore, together. And, and I'm watching the people as I'm doing it, and they're engaged and they're laughing and they're listening. And, even like the father of the bride came up after, and he's like, I have never paid attention to any wedding ceremony as much as I did this one, except for my own, and so I just started thinking about how much I enjoyed that work. And then I was talking with my friend, Nancy Antonucci, and I'm like, I wish I could be a minister without being associated with any one religion. And she's like, well, you can. It's called interfaith minister. I'm like, oh, cool. And I looked it up, and there is the Chaplaincy Institute is located in Berkeley, California, which is 2.5 hours from where I am. And it's like online for part of it, but then you are required to go on site 12 different times during your class for 5 days at a time to do these intensives. And so these 12 intensives are, well, one is psychology and spirituality. And then I think 2 are psychology and spirituality, and the other 10 are different religious paths that you study in depth. And then as a student, you like pick one that you specialize in and a second one that you secondarily focus on, but you technically know something about all of them. It just sounds so cool. And they will let you come and sit in for free on the first day of any one of their monthly classes. So I'll be doing that in January or February probably. So yeah, I lost track of the question. Oh, how is this not just me sacrificing everything? Yeah, so there's tons of opportunities here. Right.
Well, but it also sounds like whereas for people who maybe felt like the other person was driving it, it would feel like a sacrifice. But for you, it was sort of this moment of an opportunity to shed, right? To basically be like, you know what? I'm ready to cleave away some stuff and, you know, pare it back further, you know?
Yes. And I mean, I think that's an important distinction that I should probably make clear is from the beginning of this whole thing, I never felt any feelings of like being a martyr or sacrificing. I mean, there was sacrifice of like lifestyle and budget and her being there, you know, I mean, sacrifice, but sacrifice is like too strong a word. It's like, I just adapted to do what our family needed. And, you know, but when I think of martyrdom and sacrifice, I think like, oh, you're giving up something that costs so much. And no, that has never felt, except, I guess I should be honest here, there's one place in my life where the sacrifice is big and does kind of hurt even still. But, you know, my sister, whose wedding I happen to officiate, she has, her children are now, the boy, Benjamin, is 2 years old, and then the daughter, Lily, is 7 months old. And my other sisters have had babies, and I never was into them, right? I mean, they're fine, whatever. I fell in love with, well, first Benjamin, he came first, fell head over heels in love with him, and now with Lily. And I was taking care of them when they didn't have daycare. I'd go over there at least once a week. I mean, I was just so into these kids, and I miss them so, so much. I mean, we call, we text, we FaceTime, she sends videos, but with babies, nothing can substitute for holding them and sniffing them and
exactly.
And oh my God, I miss them. But I am going back in February for sales conference for Llewellyn, so I am going to stay long and get in all my baby time. So, you know, that's how we're dealing with that. I will just go back and visit them as often as is feasible. But yes, other than that, no, it feels like, even though on the outside, Dylan's journey and my journey look really different, we are running along the same path, you know, like to here, even though it's doing different things for us. I mean, she spent the last year shedding her stuff, and now she's building her stuff. And I'm still kind of shedding, you know, like we just got here on November 6th. So we haven't been here that long. And
just over a month.
And I am still adjusting, and I'm probably going to give myself, you know, at least through the holidays, if not through January, to just adjust. So, because it's really different living in the country. I mean, we're not even talking like a suburb or a sparsely populated town. We're in the freaking country, and it's really different. And mountain roads, very windy, sometimes scary, and I'm not a great driver, and you know, so that's been a huge challenge. So I have a lot to adjust yet. Oh, even mail delivery, like, you know, we've always gotten stuff like in the mail and you know, things delivered, and right before I left home, Amazon started doing same day delivery in my neighborhood, you know, and of course we didn't need it, but it's kind of cool that it happened and it didn't cost extra. Well, here we had to get a PO box, and even with the PO box, I mean, stuff gets delivered to neighbors' houses and the neighbors just kind of walk it over, but you can't expect anything fast. Like nothing is fast, and you just have to have patience, and nothing is that dire, you know? I mean, that's one of the big differences here is no, there's no rushing. You don't have to, you know, you're totally doing what you're doing because you're not thinking of watching the clock or I have to be somewhere at this time. I mean, there's a little bit of that, but overall, the whole attitude is just so different. And that's been kind of a challenge to adjust to, but I have to say I'm kind of digging it. It's like so much less stressful.
Yeah, trying to slow down my life has been something that I've been working on for a while now, largely unsuccessfully, you know, because partly being a parent and running the store means that I do have a lot of time points and stuff like that. And partly like living in a major city and whatever, it's both hectic and everything's always possible. Like I can be coming home at like 10:30 at night and be like, oh, I got to go by the grocery store and like buy something or buy everything for the week or, you know, whatever, right? Like it's, you know, it becomes this thing where it's not like, there's always these possibilities. So nothing self-regulates, right? So
Yeah, I was going to say they just, you know, not the family, the children, the store, being an entrepreneur. I mean, all of that in and of itself makes for a very full and busy life. But also, I can only imagine that the energy of the place you live, you know, like a big city, like you said, there's always possibilities. The lights are always on. You can always do stuff. And everyone else is living in this life that's run by a clock or things to do or so many things to do. I don't know how easy it would be to even consciously try to slow down your life while you're living there. It would be so hard. So I hope you can find that because it's so cool.
It's definitely something that I'm working on. I was thinking recently about there's this Henry Rollins quote that goes around. You see it as like memes and stuff on the regular, which is there's no such thing as free time. There's no such thing as downtime. There's just lifetime. Go. Or something like that, right?
Sure.
And so like I've been not in like sometimes I sort of have read that in the past and thought of it as like stop wasting time, you know? But more so now it's been sort of emerging as like this sort of need for self-imposed structure, right? Like, you know, how do I carve out the space to make the things that I want and need to have happen, which also includes, you know, quietness and time in the ravines and, you know, all those other things, right? And it's you know, it's complicated. So yeah,
definitely. One of the things that I've been noticing here, and it'll be interesting to see how it shapes our future, is that when I lived in St. Paul or anywhere else that I've lived up till now, earning money has been super important, and not just earning enough to live, but like that was how you measured how successful you were in some ways, and having the right things, you know, and that was really kind of a way that I would measure or shape my life, because that's just what you did, right? At least how I grew up. And here, you know, like I said, farming you don't earn a lot, right? And so nobody here seems rich in money. But they could have stacks of money in the bank. I don't know. All I know is outwardly, like clothes and cars and going out and recreational shopping is not a thing here. Honestly,
you're not jaunting down the road for sushi and fancy food every night.
No, and you can wear the same clothes every day or every other day, and it's just not a thing. I mean, like but what is a thing is having the time to run into someone and just stop and chat for 45 minutes, and not be like, oh my God, I'm so, like I have never heard anyone here say, oh my God, I'm so busy, or, oh, I have to rush because, every once in a while there's something like, oh, I have to take the dog to the vet. There are time things. I don't mean there isn't, but it's so very different. And, so it's causing us to think about, well, what makes a meaningful life to us? And what do we actually need and want? And, it's part of that stripping bare. If you're living in a place where expectations of having, certain, and I was never like into fashion, but even if you're not, there's still like, some kind of line of, what people are wearing and what people are doing. And I don't know. Anyways, it's just very different and really refreshing and amazing. It's not like any kind of life I've ever known.
Do you find it's changing your spiritual practice?
Well, that's a really great question. There's a couple of things that I want to say about that. First of all, toward the end of Dylan's being gone, or like even when she was home in July, and that's when I was in China. By the end, I was barely holding it together, because I hadn't realized how holding the space for her and keeping myself going, plus all this really, really, really challenging work that I was doing, just sucked everything out of me. By the time, I had enough left to get us here, because the drive here was super hard. It was 5 days. I had my car and the dog. She had the big U-Haul, and we drove through all kinds of weather and roads. And I had enough barely to hold it together to get here. Once we got here, I kind of lost it, and, Dylan talked about, well, you should do some magic for the house sale. Cause I had been doing it before I left, but I hadn't continued it and this and that. And I hadn't been doing my nightly blessing practice. And I'm like, I have nothing. I just have to let something fill me up. I don't even have it in me to ask to be filled up. It's really like I don't know, it was like a slug. And I am just now starting to feel like, okay, like I just started this past week. Well, it's only Wednesday, but just this week I got my nighttime blessing practice in line, because it took me a while to figure out like what was going on with that. So back in St. Paul, my nightly blessing is I knew my neighborhood so well. I could visualize like where I would extend my bubble of where I could affect the energy, and as I did it, the longer I did it, the further it got. But that would be how I start. I would like, here's where I'm going with this. And then I would do 2 blessings, always may all beings be at peace. And then a specific blessing, different one each night. And, when I got here, it's like, I don't know this area. And even if I did, there's like hardly any people in this area. And I don't, the energy of
the bunnies need blessing too,
Yes. But I just couldn't get a grip on how I should do this. And so what I realized is, and this is like even better than the neighborhood blessings, is there are so many farms. Like it's on the land we're on, there are plants, there are animals, and the area I know is full of land or plants and animals. So I'm sending blessings into the food. And so when people eat that food that I've been blessing for its entire life of growing, they're going to get so blessed, right? And
amazing.
I know, what a way to affect change in the world, and I'm like so excited about that. So that is something that has changed. It has remained the same. It's still a nighttime blessing practice, but I've changed what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So that has changed. As far as everything else, I'm still like trying to make friends with the trees and the land and everything around here. So I'm like, okay, how are we going to work together? What are we going to do? So that is still in coming into being.
When you were traveling, because in the last year you were in Italy and various places in the U.S. and China and so on, Do you try and tune in with the land where you are and the trees and stuff as you travel, or?
I have not. Usually with the traveling, it's, this year, it's been so hard, that I don't actually, no. I mean, I kept feeling like if I could or should, maybe I would feel more grounded, but I don't know if this ever happens to you, but when you get too far away from your center where your practice holds you, that it's like the further out you go, the more you need to come back to the center, but the harder it is to come back to the center. I mean, that's how it feels for me. And sometimes, it just feels like I have to totally lose it and then reel back in.
Yeah.
So.
I feel like that's true. I feel like I definitely have experienced that. For me, I definitely, one of the first things that I do when I arrive somewhere new is like spend some time tuning in and, like as a way of getting there. But I'm kind of like right now, I'm kind of going through something different. I was writing about it somewhere earlier, like yesterday or today. And, I feel like I'm like, I've left the planet, like, or at least like everything, like, I mean, obviously I haven't because I'm still living here and living with all the people that I'm, living with and working with and so on. But, earlier this year, like maybe since the middle of the summer, I started working with, meteorites and meteorite derived things like moldavite and stuff like that. And then a couple weeks ago, or even a week ago, was my birthday, and I picked up a new meteorite. And ever since I got that one, I feel like metaphorically, but on some sort of deeper level, that I'm just traveling through space with it now, and it's gonna go somewhere different, and I don't know what that means. It's kind of weird because, like, unlike this sort of return to center that you're talking about, and maybe this is just a big arc of a return to center, it feels like it's going somewhere different, and I don't really know what that means or what that's going to look like, but yeah, it's very interesting.
Wow. I cannot wait to hear more about that, because seriously.
Yeah.
Well, and because I remember, this was kind of funny. I remember Dan Pelletier, who owns Hero Garden, one of the co-owners. I remember he and I used to debate all the time and just kind of horse around with ideas. And one time he asked me, he's like, "So tell me, what if River Tam used a tarot deck? What would it look like?" And River Tam, for those who don't know, is she is a character from Firefly. If you don't know Firefly, you should know it because it's awesome. Go check it out. Yeah. That's right. And I said, and I had this great answer. I'm like, oh, she would use one that the cards are completely blank, and when she laid them down, they would get pictures on them. Because she's all kind of mystical and strange and whatever. And Dan was like, no, she wouldn't, because he had the answer he wanted to give. And I don't remember what it was. Was it the baseball tarot?
Was that his answer?
No. But it had to do with astrology. And he was kind of griping on, how Earth-based tarot uses Earth-based astrology. And when you're in outer space, the constellations don't look the same. Because you're looking at them from a different point of view. So, so this idea of, what kind of perspective do you get and what kind of truths are revealed when you're looking at things from outer space. Like if you are looking at Earth from there, or you're out there looking somewhere different that you can't see from Earth or feel or, whatever. So I just think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pretty weird too.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what comes of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read a book called The Sparrow by Mary Doria Russell?
No.
The Sparrow, and its follow-up is called Children of God.
Is it good?
Oh my God, life-changing. But
Okay.
you have to read both of them together, not together at the same time, but read The Sparrow and then read Children of God, because The Sparrow's going to rip your heart open, and then Children of God is going to rip it even more.
Okay.
And then bring reconciliation. So it's like, they're amazing. But I bring them up because it involves outer space and spirituality. You know, it's science fiction, but there's this really deeply rooted, I mean, the main characters are part of the Catholic Church. And, but don't let that say, oh, Catholic Church, whatever, because it's totally not. It's so worth it. Anyways, so you might find those novels good for your journey.
I will consider it. I this is something that probably I don't talk about very much, but I actually don't really read ever. And I recently tried to give reading a go again. Not that I can't read. I just don't read.
Right.
And it just didn't really go anywhere. Like I picked up a bunch of books that seemed really cool and tried to read them, and would find myself picking them up. And you know, when I was talking to Enrique in one of the podcasts, we were talking about the fact that like run across a sentence or somebody will say something, I'll be like, no, I need to stop. I have to just go and think about that for 6 weeks or 6 months. And so like reading is this very strange thing for me where like I'll start and then something will catch me and it'll set me off on ideas and stuff. And then the book just sits there. Like, you know, I've gotten 10 pages in and then haven't gone back to it for 3 or 6 months or whatever. And so I actually just gave up on the books that were sitting around because they were starting to give me the stink eye from like there were dust on them. I was like, no, I can't do it. I'm sorry. I thought I could read, but I can't. So.
Oh yeah,
but you never know.
Yeah,
novels might be different. So
yeah, maybe, yeah, hopefully, but or not, whatever. There, anyways, there you go.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Yeah. So,
go on.
So as somebody who's sort of had creative projects on the go, right? How does it feel to sort of not have a creative project on the go right now? Because it's other than you as creative project, right? You've kind of cleared the decks of a lot of that stuff.
Right. Well, there are like two levels of feelings going on right now. One is I feel like I am not able to actually fully enjoy that feeling yet because we have just gotten here and our house is from St. Paul, just recently sold, but the closing isn't until January 2nd. So of course it could fall through anytime between now and then we'd start all over. So like there's that kind of mental space needed to deal with that and all that paperwork. Also moving to a new state, car registrations, new driver's license, health insurance, renter's insurance, you know, there's just like a lot of things, paperworky things. So I'm like just grateful that I don't have a lot going on, that I can take care of this stuff.
And it takes time too, right? Like one of the things that changed this year was my eldest has switched to being homeschooled. And in fact, we're actually unschooling her, which is basically like we're letting her drive the stuff and we're just sort of gently nudging her towards stuff. And really what that looks like for the most part is reminding her of the stuff that she likes and wants to be doing, that she forgets that she likes and wants to be doing. And, you know, somebody said when we started the process that it can take 3 to 6 months to de-school yourself, right? To like slide out of that structure that you were living in and it was determining everything about you for so long, right? And so, you know, I think you're in one of those times, right? Where
yes, and I would love it if I had like you to do for me what you did for your daughter, or not you personally, but a person like you, or just a part of myself that can do that. Because that, you know, nudging in directions, reminding what you like, you know, and that's what kind of the path that I'm hoping to follow when I actually get this tedious stuff done. You know, I mean, I've got these books that I want to really dig into. I have a box full of notes and ideas that need exploration. I have some art ideas I want to play with, you know, so there's like lots of things on the table. And
can't wait to see where it all goes.
I know. Oh, one of the other because you asked how does it feel? One of the other feelings, and this is when I'm really glad to see it didn't pop up first because it means I'm kind of giving it a lower priority, which is what it should have, is this fear of failure. Like, oh my God, I've talked for so long about having this year off and blah, blah, blah. And like, now I have it. What if I don't do anything brilliant with it? Oh my God, that would be so humiliating, right? So, that I realize that's ridiculous and not productive feeling. So, I'm trying to, where is that coming from? Where's its root? How can I pull that out? Because it's not good. It's not good for me right now. But it's there. It's there.
Producing stuff is such a strange business, especially like creative and or spiritual stuff, I mean, as you know, I created a tarot deck this year, right?
I heard
over the last little while, right? And like I actually created 40 cards between the beginning of August and the middle of September and wrote 30,000 words or something like that, all while working. And while my mom was, had her hip replaced and then fell and broke it and was in the hospital. And while my partner went across to the other coast and put on a play, and I was at home working and had the kids. And like, there's this time where like I was just doing all this stuff. And I remember sort of as I was like kind of finally wrapping up the material that I was like, this is great. I'm just going to keep this going. I'm going to do my next thing, which I already know what it is, and blah, blah, blah. And I totally didn't, like, and it's like, it's so funny. Like this notion of like, what does space produce? What does time produce? What does availability produce? I go back to like the sort of notion of the muse and that a lot. It's like, that'll drive you whenever, right? And like we might have you have this year, and the muse may show up, and you might do your most important to the universe thing that you do for a long time, or you might just like spend a lot of time like lounging with finger paints in the muse and doing stuff, and that leads to things down the road. Like there's just no accounting for it, right? At least that's how I see it anyway.
Mm-hmm. No, I do believe that is true, which is why I want to kind of get a hold of that feeling to, help remember that it's not what you produce that's important this year. It's what goes on inside of me more than anything else. And that has value too, and for people who pay attention to like the wheel of the year, I mean, this is a good time to have moved if I'm going to be like cocooning and just adjusting and being easy on myself, because it's the dark time of the year and this quiet introspection feels very natural, at least for me. So that's been super helpful. As a way to prepare for because then spring will come and hopefully I'll be adjusted and ready to go and doing things. Hey, but if not, then that's okay too, right? I mean,
then you can watch the plants come up.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was that?
That'll be important too, right?
Yes.
Then you can watch the plants come up, right? Everything will spring up and life will grow and so on, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, what's really interesting here? They're planting things now.
Wow.
I know. I mean, that's what Dylan was doing the last 2 days. She was planting, I think, cauliflower and chard and one other thing. Oh, and she's been doing a lot of onions for farmers. Yeah, they're planting now. They have a really long growing season here. Like, I don't know if it ever stops.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think there's just certain crops that will grow this time of year. And some things that you plant now that come up in the summer or something like that. Clearly, I'm not a farmer.
We'll expect some more farm-handedness by the next time we talk.
Okay.
Detailed graphs. Well, we'll plant this at this time and da-da-da. Yeah. So I guess another question that is interesting is, so Dylan's been through a lot of change,
Yes.
and you've carried on your relationship through that.
Yes.
Because I mean, how many people could sort of imagine saying, "Oh, sure, go away for a year. I'll see you.
Yeah.
I'll see you sometime." I mean, I know it wasn't quite that, but like that would be a deal breaker for a lot of people, right?
I suppose you're right. Oh, and it kind of actually was that
How did
because,
you roll with that? How did that happen?
well, it happened very naturally and easily, really. And it kind of was what you said because we didn't know when she was coming back. So it was totally open-ended. I mean, the only thing is we had a certain amount of money from our retirement that we allotted to that to help cover that year. Right. And I said, you can be gone as long as you need to be or until this money runs out. So there wasn't really an ending on it. But how did I roll with it? Well, okay, so probably first and foremost is because I love her. And she needed this. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to not do it or let her do it or support, not even let her, but support her wholeheartedly. I needed to see her become healthy and happy. So that's one reason. The other reason is the longer she was staying, the worse she was getting because the more conscious she was becoming that something was wrong within her, like just the worse and harder it was for her to be home and for me to live with her. Right. So, so it was almost in some ways a relief on just this kind of, you're driving me crazy level because you're so discontented. I can't be by you. That's a lot more cut and dry than it really was, but it'll give you an idea. The other thing is I'm very hermit-like and like to be alone anyways. So, just being alone is not hard for me. I know some people, it is hard to be alone. I would be days at a time without seeing or talking to anybody. It was fine with me. Plus I had a lot of work to do. So, that keep me, I was never like lonely and never didn't have anything to do. And also we'd been together for almost 20 years. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it, but sometimes I think while she was gone, I kept thinking, maybe everyone in a long-term relationship, if they're feeling stagnated or whatever, or just want to boost or add something, inject something into their relationship, maybe everyone should do this, take a sabbatical from each other, not a separation, it's not like we're going to, go try to be without, but you know what I mean? Just give each other space to become without, because even healthy relationships, there's some kind of codependence, some kind of you do something, you see how your partner reacts and that reinforces or makes you not, even in healthy ones, I don't think that that's avoidable.
Yeah, well, and in my relationship, which has been going on for almost 20 years, right? We kind of use this language of we keep going back to dating, right? Something will happen and we'll be like, all right, so who are we now? What do we want now? What makes sense now? What are we going to do going forward? What assumptions have we been living that we no longer want to be living? And I think that kind of reassessment of things, whether through separations or not, is kind of one of the few ways that I can see that long-term things can really sort of work well and be healthy, because otherwise, maybe if two people don't change, but I don't know, I'm such a changing person. I'm always shifting in some way or other. So I don't think that that's really a road that would work for me. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that, yes. And I've heard other people talk about that too, about, sure, you commit to a relationship, and especially in our culture, the idea is, you commit for life and whatever, but it's not really realistic to, I think if, well, I don't think it's good for people to stay exactly the same their whole life. I mean, maybe it is for some people, but it's never been that way for me. So it feels like it could lead to stagnation. And for relationship, I mean, people will say, well, you used to do this or you used to do that. Well, okay, so maybe sometimes that's a problem. You're not being considerate or prioritizing each other. Or it's like, well, we don't do that anymore because that's not who we are anymore. So like what you were just saying, have conversations, what is important and what's different and what are we going to let go of? So you're not always like, just, oh, you don't do that anymore. But like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore, but we are doing this, and very consciously tending the relationship and not expecting it to be the same, but helping it to grow and change as the individuals grow and change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not easy though.
No. Sometimes it's not. Well, and I am lucky in this case. For me, it has been easy because what, has happened with Dylan is she went away and lost all the things that wasn't her. And most of the things that weren't her were things I didn't like anyways that much. And she clearly didn't enjoy them either anymore. Yeah. And so what's revealed is more her, what at least at this point in her life is her true nature. And she's more comfortable and confident, which makes her even better to be around and highlights everything that I loved about her from the start. So, I guess I could see, this idea, one of the partners going off for a while being kind of scary. And, there are hardships involved, but in the end, it's kind of worth it if it helps the person come back being more themselves and more confident and more authentic. It's like a little bit of a sacrifice, or if you even want to think of it that way, but in exchange, you get something really good. So, and like the whole deal breaker thing, do you have a partner because you want someone who's like physically next to you all the time and that's the definition of what your partner is? Or is a partner someone who you help each other become your best selves, which is much broader and leaves it more open to things other than just, we will sleep under the same roof for as many nights as possible per year or whatever.
Well, and I guess it's just really important to know which of those you are, if you're one or the other, right?
Right.
Because if you mistake that can be a really, speaking of uncomfortable, yeah, we'll just stay the same forever. Oh wait, no, I'm the changer, and now this is not working, right? And I mean that happens too, right? So
that does.
Yeah. So, are you reading cards for people in the neighborhood? Or the farmers coming around and ask you about their cows and sheep and their broccoli and chard? Or
no, I have read for one of the farmers that Dylan works for, but and others have asked, but it hasn't happened yet. We've only been here a little over a month.
Fair enough.
I'm sure it will happen. I mean, I keep telling people I'll bring my cards next time they invite us over for dinner or whatever, so I'm sure I will. I don't know if they will ask about their cows and their crops because they're usually really smart and know, like, I don't think they need the cards. But if they do, I'll report back next year and let you know. Maybe I'll develop a book on tarot and agriculture or something.
Amazing. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
So what are you looking forward to over the next bit? You're going to go check out this school, right? This clergy program.
Right.
What else are you looking forward to? It's just getting into your paints and your art supplies and trying stuff?
Yes. I definitely want to continue working on my art, and I have my novel that I have written, and I did go through a phase where I sent it to a bunch of agents, of course, got nothing, so I kind of want to decide about, am I going to do another round of agent searching, or am I going to just self-publish it? Which is a possibility, do something with it, because I just feel so bad for it. It's just sitting there, and it's so cute. One of my sisters, because I had, of course, all my sisters read it, and one of my sisters is like, are you ever going to do anything with that? And are you ever going to write the sequel? I just think about those characters all the time. And, so, which I think is a good sign.
Yeah, that's a great compliment.
Yeah. And then, I do want to just get, I do love tarot, and I can't help but see everything through the lens of tarot. And I'm super interested in exploring the fool's journey and on different levels and in different ways. And I don't, and also part of this, minister training too, even, as I study each module of each of the different religions, taking those precepts and fitting them into tarot and just seeing, and then using that as some kind of a comparative model. I don't know. But it just seems like there's a lot of material to play with there.
Well, yeah, I think that there's a lot of really interesting ways in which tarot can be used to look at traditions, right? Of course, I think that given that my tarot deck is an Orisha tarot deck, right? I basically spent a bunch of time exploring it as, where those two systems overlap and how they might shed some light onto each other in some way, right?
Yes.
And so I think that there's a lot of really great ground that can happen from that. I think, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what emerges. So,
yeah. Oh, I thought of another project idea that I might play with. Yeah. So, there's a lot esoteric, magic, all of that kind of stuff. It has deep roots, right? Historical, sometimes ancient roots, whatever. And, a lot of people in the circles we run in, really study that stuff and develop modern practices based on those things. And, and I think that's really interesting. Obviously, I was just talking about studying that, but I also think that, as human consciousness evolves, that spiritual truths or understandings will change and develop too, because I think that we humans are creating reality and the future as we go along. So, I just think that always relying on the ancient is not the only way. And so I got this idea of, thinking about magic, what can we learn about magic in modern times by studying and comparing and analyzing how magic shows up in literature, modern literature. And so I thought of doing the way this came into my head is because the past 3 months or so, I listen to audiobooks as well as reading books, and I just needed comfort books to get me through that. Like I was saying, that end time was really hard and I couldn't be challenged intellectually. I just wanted something that was comforting. So I re-listened to all these series that I love. I re-listened to all the Harry Potter books, and I re-listened to Jim Butcher's The Harry Dresden Files, which are about Harry Dresden, who's a magician. I re-listened to Lev Grossman's trilogy, The Magicians. And right now I'm re-listening to, I'm almost embarrassed to say it, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it's, because it's more of a romance novel, but it's, A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. And there's a trilogy of books. There may even be more. I don't know. But it's, so all of these series, I realized, I'm like, okay, I didn't realize these were all my comfort series, and they all have in common is that they are magical worlds in the modern world.
Right.
It's how magic works in contemporary times. And so, so what are the core, in novels, they don't just lay out a world view, right? Because that would be boring. That would be nonfiction or something. But, so to just go through these books and kind of pull out of them their worldviews and the way the world works and how magic works and what it is and what its purpose is and, how does spirituality and ethics fit into it, et cetera, et cetera. I just think that would be like such a fun comparative study of those 4. Well, the first 3 for sure, maybe the Deborah Harkness series too. I'm not sure about that one yet. I just think that would be so cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on these days with magic, I think that there's sort of an interesting blend of contemporary practice and sort of modern practice, but also sort of a return to, as Gordon White says, a re-enchanting of the world, or a more animist worldview, and it's funny. I never realized that I had an animist worldview and always have. Like, I just didn't have the language for it in that way, but that's kind of always been my worldview. So it's very interesting to see that kind of emerge and see people, working with that and exploring that in different settings and so on. And, it's funny because so much of my magic is urban, in one way or another. And some of that involves spirits of place and spirits of that have been here. And, and some of that comes from the plants and animals that are around. And some of that just deals with like the urbanness and the energy of people and the flow of stuff through the city and things like that. So I think that, the river has one kind of magic and the busiest street in town has another, right? So
that's cool. It is really cool. I remember when I first started working at Llewellyn was when I became really aware of modern paganism, and and it was always way back that 20 years ago, so much stuff was so little English cottage in the woods kind of idealized life, and if you weren't living that, you couldn't really live this life. I mean, I know that's not what the books were saying, but that's how it felt. And I did always think there should be more urban-based, and Christopher Penczak eventually, I think he's the one who wrote City Magic or Urban Magic or something like that.
Yeah, there's a few books for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's really neat because one of the things that interested me was, people would talk about, oh, well, you have to be in tune with the natural world and the earth and da-da-da-da-da, as if anything that's man-made isn't natural. And maybe depending on your definition, but in one sense, the broadest sense, is it natural? Well, it exists in the natural world. It is physical, so there is whatever we make is made out of something that existed in the wild or naturally in some form or another. So to think that the same kind of energy isn't flowing through it, well, it wouldn't be exactly the same. It would be altered, modified, but someone has to pay attention to that and learn its ways and learn how it works to understand it.
Yeah. Well, and ironically enough, now you've moved to a little Sufi cottage in the woods, right?
Yes.
So that sort of idyllic thing that people were craving in one way or another is not far from where you've sort of ended up, which is kind of amusing.
True. It is amusing because one of the other ridiculous feelings I'm dealing with is I feel guilty, which is just silly because...
Why?
Because I feel so lucky. Like, I look out my kitchen window, right outside the kitchen window, there are freaking hummingbirds, which, in Minnesota, it's pretty rare. And further, the trees just beyond, there are egrets in the trees. Beyond that are the mountains. I mean, come on. It's just gorgeous. And like I described, the laid back lifestyle and stuff, I just feel lucky and I feel sorry for people who don't have it. And like one of my sisters, both my sisters work so hard. And I don't know, like survivor's guilt or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I get that. Obviously your feelings are your feelings, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, I think that if people listen to all of the podcasts that you and I have done together, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you can see the moments at which you made deliberate choices, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's the time that I did, like, around when I did that impossible reading for you, and you started you're like, I'm going to start shifting this and shifting that and shifting these other things, and at all these points, you've made that choice that would open that road and take you in those other directions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's not as easy as we could all go back to the land and like that kind of thing. Like, that's totally not true or real.
Right.
But if people deeply desired it,
Yeah.
there are often choices that could be made in those directions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like, privilege and other limits get in the way, but but in a general way, lots of people have this option to sort of choose to make change and choose to go in different directions, and they don't,
Right.
and
right.
yeah.
No, you are right. You are right. And that's exactly what Dylan said to me when I mentioned the guilt
Uh-huh.
thing, and sometimes with my ridiculous or unhealthy or unproductive feelings, which actually part of my growth, because being able to actually feel and identify these kind of feelings, new territory for me,
Mm-hmm.
doing so well. But sometimes it helps to voice them, because to say them out loud also helps you to hear how silly they are. And then to have someone say something like, well, yes, you're having that feeling. But as you're dealing with that feeling, remember also, like what you just said, people have choices, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes. You are so right. Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, this is a long ways. Like, I don't remember, but I think maybe our first one might have been me going on and on about truth with a capital T or something like that.
I think that's true. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness we do these every fall so I can remember the magnitude of this journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's amazing. Well, I think maybe this is a good spot for us to bookmark it until next time.
I think so. Yeah.
Are you still online anywhere? Is there a space where people can follow you and stuff?
Yes. My website is www.tarotshaman.com, and my contact information is there. And I do blog occasionally. As I play with the ideas coming up in this next year, I will probably be blogging more, because it'll be a way of playing with the ideas and maybe getting interaction and feedback on them, whatever. So that my email address you can get from the website, but it's barbara.moore07@comcast.net. And yeah, totally email me, because I'm just here hanging out. I'm not like all busy. So don't be afraid to write to me.
Amazing. All right. Well, thank you for making time to be on the show again. As always, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you too. I love it. And I look forward to next year already.
Yay.
Yes.
Thank you, as always, for listening. I hope you've really enjoyed it. A big thanks to the lovely human beings who have put some wonderful reviews on iTunes for the podcast. Please do consider supporting the Patreon. I sound like a PBS ad, but seriously, even $1 helps. It all adds up towards being able to make all sorts of exciting things happen, both for yourself and for others. So head on over to patreon.com/thehermitslamp or use the link in the show notes. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.